Welcome to Secrets from the Scene, a show for local musicians who want to improve their music, grow their audience, and learn about Minnesota's music scene. If you're interested in talking about all things music related and meeting interesting people from our local community, you're in the right place. Welcome to Secrets from the Scene. On today's episode, I have my friend Taylor Lewin. Taylor Lewin is an Emmy award-winning composer and sound editor. His work can be heard on local, national, and online TV networks and has been shared by publications around the world. With a background as an in-studio audio engineer and music producer, he has worked with a variety of artists both locally and nationally, signed and independent. Taylor also has a distinct passion for sound design and post-production audio for video. He owns Audio, which serves independent filmmakers and international brands alike by sound designing and polishing their audio for commercial release. And there's definitely a lot more that Taylor does and knows that I can't wait to dig into. So please welcome Taylor.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for being here, man. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, this is fun. I know we've already started talking.
I want people to know more about you than just that bio because I know more and it's very impressive. So give the pitch.
All right. Pitch, do we want to go way back to how I got into music and everything?
No, I want to hear I want you to brag a little bit on yourself right now.
Oh, so my elevator pitch?
I want the elevator pitch, yeah.
So I've pivoted now to doing more audio for video things like the bio said. So a lot of it is sound design for corporate type things or films, or I focus more on the technical side of things. So my elevator pitch now is for my company. We've worked with over 20 Fortune 500 companies. We've worked with dozens of professional sports teams and organizations and worked on content for major events like the Stanley Cup and the World Cup, which I was super pumped about because that's the biggest event in the world.
Yeah, I think it literally is, right?
Yeah, billions of people watch. So that was pretty surreal when that happened. But, sometimes I say it a little bit more smoothly. But when I'm okay, I guess I have to brag, that's usually what I say.
I think it's super impressive. There's no reason not to think that ultimately. I mean, those are huge pieces of content, which is why I'm excited to get your opinion today and your input on what makes good content and why it's important.
Yes. Don't be boring.
Don't be boring. Why your content sucks. Maybe that'll be the title for today's episode. But in any case, let people know a little bit about you. Now take it back to where it started because, we were both audio engineers, I think, when we first met.
Yeah. I think, we were both recording bands, trying to make cool stuff. I mean, we're still doing that. But yeah, so for me, I started really young in music. I started the Suzuki method at age 4, which is, I think it's based in Japan. So a lot of videos of little kids playing a bunch of violins or piano. That's the same program I started out with. And I just learned how to watch my teacher's fingers and listen to the song. And it was really a ear training program. So that's kind of where I started out. And then in middle school, I kept doing music. But in middle school, I was put into a multimedia course where I learned some video editing stuff and some other recording, things like that. And then kind of was involved in all ages venues and church music throughout growing up, and then did school band, then taught myself drums and guitar in high school because I had that base of piano. Then decided I wanted to do it full time. I wanted to do it as a career. It's probably because MTV Cribs, but that's the fun thing I blame for it. Because I was hey, they get to make cool things, hang out with cool people, and have cool stuff. I'm I think that's kind of what I want. So that's exactly how it worked out. Not at all. But so that's really early Genesis was very much ear training or already getting into all the different facets around audio and music, all the different kind of avenues. And then while I was still in high school, I got an audio degree at a tech school for just recording. And then I transferred that into a music business degree where I always say it was half music, half business, and half both, just because math. And from there, the business stuff really stuck out to me and the marketing. And there was also a big music program there.
Where is this at?
This is a small school called North Central in Minneapolis. Through my time there, I was there's a ton of people who want to do music. How can I just help them? How can I hang out with my friends and make music? And so I really gravitated towards, also monetization, but I gravitated towards the technical side pretty quickly. And so I had bands, I was in bands, did the performance thing, but I liked either being on stage or in the booth. I don't know, there's just something with my introvert brain I really liked like having that kind of separation. And I could kind of think, I could tell stories or hear stories, impact the whole experience of the art or the music or the story.
Yeah.
And where are we at in the story, right?
College,
yes. So because I had already done some audio stuff before I got to the 4-year school, I started running sound at some venues and some churches to just get reps in, and then connected with a studio called Humans Win. The guy there was awesome, Lance. And I started interning there. And then as I was kind of trying to pick up gigs in the cities, one of the bands I was playing in was recording. I was too busy to kind of help them out. And so they found this studio and I was able to make one of the sessions, but I was like too busy working and trying to pay for school and all that, as we know. But I clicked with the studio guy really well. And then I sent him a Facebook message. And like a few months later, he's like, hey, you still interested? And so I was like, it was one of those messages where I was like, hey, I'll take out the trash. I just want to be around. Like, let me know how I can help. And then what was nice is the band that I was in, I had already also recorded. So he knew I knew what was going on. And there was sort of proof. But then him and I became really good friends. And I realized like we needed more clients to support both of us. And so from there, I was like, okay, how do we get more clients? How do we help our clients do better? You know, because it's like growing a business is like you need more clients or you need to do more with your current clients.
Yep.
And so kind of went down that rabbit hole, and it was right around all the time I was doing my marketing classes. So I started interning at Humans Win for a while. Then I was like, I really want to do this full time, but I had finished college. I was working some part-time jobs, did like Starbucks for like 6 months. And I was like, I don't want to do this. And so what I did was I would always take the opening shifts where I'd get all the free coffee. Then I would be off at like 9 or 10 and just like super caffeined up and then email people like the rest of the day.
That's such a good strategy.
And then it took like 6 months of that after like 3 weeks of getting enough clients at the studio for myself to like match or exceed what I was making at Starbucks. I quit and just like dove in.
Was that mostly like cold emailing people?
It was a lot of cold emailing.
Yeah.
But I was also trying to go to shows, meet people.
Yep.
So like I had something to offer. I wasn't just trying to like, hey, look at me. Can I help? I was trying to be like, hey, I think you're cool. Like, let's just connect. Sometimes just connecting to make friends because I didn't know anybody in the cities at that time. And so a lot of it was just trying to make friends, like being like, hey, I like music too. Let's talk. Let's develop a relationship. Also, I work at a studio. Would love to help you out when you're ready. And then from there, kind of using some of that network and jumping off the network of the studio, just kind of created a thing that happened and kept just going hard with that like kind of hustle mentality back in the 2010s. And eventually just made records for a living. And I think when we met, it was probably the year where I was like still like meeting a lot of people.
That could be, yeah.
Yeah. And it was really fun.
So how long were you at Humans Win?
I think 6 years.
Okay.
2010 to 2018, maybe 2012 to 2018.
While you were there, was that your main thing, or were you still sort of playing around in other audio areas? Because that's something we're going to get to, and that you've kind of gone through a lot of different things. You've done live sound, you've done the in-studio sound, you've done stuff on sets, and now you're doing post for commercials and that sort of thing. Were you dabbling in all those other areas, or was this like focused in on doing studio work?
That period was very focused on doing studio work, but I still was doing some live sound gigs.
Okay.
Just for the extra income, for, you have to kind of do everything to pay the bills.
Sure.
But the main focus and the studio became my primary source of income pretty fast once I had built up that like runway.
When did video start becoming a part of your career path?
Ooh, I think 2015. So just a couple years into the studio, with all of my marketing classes, I realized like, hey, social media was getting big. I had a couple friends who were like, let's try to like figure out how to make people like us on this social media thing. And then before I even started recording bands like regularly at the studio, I was like, how do I get them like into the press? How do I get them better publicity? One of the ways like a lot of bands struggle with like not having good photos or whatever. I was like, well, we're in the studio, like let's get good photos. And so one of my silent goals was to be like, okay, how do I take good enough pictures that they will want to use them as their profile picture? Because it's like, if they're in their profile picture, I don't have to ask, and everybody's going to be like, where is that cool photo from? Who took it? Like, that's the natural conversation. And that was when it was like everything back then. So kind of through that, but then my buddy Chris was also kind of doing both video and audio. And so once he was like, hey, I have some friends, they need some video. Can you like hold the camera and help me? I was like, yeah, awesome. And he's like, these are the settings you use, whatever. It's like, great. And then started kind of picking up video from there. Like I had known enough from like that way back class in middle school, but this was the first time I thought about like ISO, shutter speed, autofocus, manual focus, those basics. So recorded some shows, but then I was like, hey, this is great for the studio. So I'd borrow his camera, and it very quickly became a thing I would offer at the studio. Sometimes it was just like, we have the studio ready, we're recording. Once we record it, let's just throw up a camera, get something to put out on social media. Covers were pretty big. And so there's a couple people I worked with at the time, and those videos did really well. Jay now goes by Andera. He was like Jay Smart at the time. So one of those videos got like close to 100,000 plays, helped him get some good recognition around town. Eventually, just through different people, we ended up doing a music video with Lissy, who she was on Sony for a while. And that music video premiered on Billboard.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
And so it was like wild. It was like, oh, of the 2 music videos, like serious music videos I made, one of them premiered on Billboard, which I think is hilarious.
That's awesome. What do you think helped to get it that far along?
She had a good team and a good manager. She's really cool, but she'd been around the business. So they had the press in place and it landed there. And then later on, we did another music video with Andera. He's on Verve Records, I believe now. And so his team had it set up, but the video kind of went viral. Like Chris Hemsworth shared it. So it has a couple million views now. It was like around this time of year as well, where he's like, hey, I have this idea. Can we like record it? I was like, sure, let's just make it happen. And so I don't think I was really there for it, but like my buddy Connor, like, hey, can you record this? Like, then we can figure it out, make it happen. And then he did all the hard work on that one. But it was fun to be like, oh yeah.
That's cool. So you start dabbling, you start offering this as part of the audio services, essentially. You see some success. I imagine you start going, well, let's follow this more. At what point did you start doing more of the like on set, we're going to be filming commercials, we're doing indie movies, that kind of audio? Because that's a different world from the studio in a lot of ways.
Yeah. So that was something I did in like the tech school course.
Okay.
I didn't even realize it was a job. And like, so there was a project where we had to like replace all the sounds in a commercial or a movie scene. And I remember I chose Batman Begins, and it was just a bunch of looping fight sounds. I was like, oh, this is fun. I could do this, but never thought about it. Just went the music route, recording bands and doing live music, because like that's kind of what I wanted to do anyways. Then when I was working like a valet job downtown, I happened to work with a bunch of kids who were going to school for like filmmaking. And so I was like, hey, I know audio. They had like their senior films. I was like, hey, can I work on those?
Oh, okay.
And so it was really like at the same time, I was trying to like make records that I started working with them, and they all stayed in the business too. And so we kept working together more, and I met people through them. But for a while, it was just like, nah, I'm focused on the studio. I want to do the artist thing. But one of the projects early on I did was they wanted me to compose. And then I also was like, I need to make this sound better too. It's like, I'll do the music, but I also want to make this whole thing sound better. And I remembered what I had learned in that course. And so I like figured out AAFs and all this post audio stuff. It was like it was a little series. It went to like KSTP and aired on TV for a little bit. And then we put it onto YouTube. It went viral. Then the series went to some awards. We won an Emmy for that. So that was like my first Emmy. I didn't even realize it for a while. And then I started being like, wait, this is cool. I like this. Then I realized brands have a lot better budgets typically. And there's a level of monotony with the post audio side of things. And so I realized it didn't bother me. Like I was like, oh, I can do this. Like we've all done the vocal tuning and all that. Like that I feel is way harder than what I do now. So it was at the same time, honestly, like I did music and I did that, but I didn't realize like, oh, I could do more of this.
Okay, yeah.
Until like we're at the point in the studio where we're starting to get into sync licensing, trying to get like onto TV shows. You know, some of the content stuff was really working. We're trying to do some of that for the studio and then for our artist friends, just so we could capture more attention. And like, I really like the sustainable business where I'm like, I love that we get to collaborate, but I also want us all to make money together, which became more difficult with music as like the monetization structures changed. But then it was like brand became a big deal, and then social media became a big deal. It's like, how do we monetize this? How do we like create a career that can pay my bills, can like support a family, can like hit all these things that like 45-year-old me will want?
So that naturally started to lead to you starting your own company, _audio.
Yeah.
What year did that begin, technically?
That started in 2018. We were thinking about expanding, but the goal was kind of to go like the sync world and kind of almost like close to the public, just work on our own music and go towards the video, like audio for video side, whether it's music or whatever. And so we closed down the studio. My buddy moved to LA, kind of focused on the music thing. And then I stayed in town and was like already starting to do some boom audio on set with those guys that I had like met in college.
Yeah.
And it started to pick up really fast. It was the same skills. It felt like easier, and I got to hang out with cool people all day. So I started out by just like, I'm like, I need to meet people. So I just was the boom guy. Got a bunch of gigs that way. I worked with some big brands around town on some really fun shoots. And then I was like, hey, I can polish this too. Like, I know Pro Tools. I've done this before with like that series. And so I like figure out how to make sure everything I worked on sounded amazing to me. And then how it translates. Because like then it was everybody's watching on mobile versus TV versus radio, and how to make it sound good everywhere. Yeah. So like 2018 was when I was like, you know what? I think I'm just going to really focus on the audio for video side. I was still composing a little bit, still like scratching the music itch. So then from there, I worked on a bunch of ads. Since then, I've worked on like a handful of feature films, have a couple coming up, which are a whole different beast in themselves. I have done a couple other TV shows and TV series locally here, and then just a ton of ad work for those big brands.
Mm-hmm. I love that story, and I feel like it's worth kind of summarizing to some extent, because what I appreciate about that and about your drive and your personality from where you started up until today is the sort of the mindset that it takes to make that all work. There's a couple things that I think are worthy of pointing out. One is that constantly you're using the network that's right around you at school, the people you meet at work, and so on, to create new opportunities. And a lot of them have paid off for you in big ways over many, many years. While that seems maybe lucky or easy, at the same time, it takes nurturing.
Yeah.
You're the type that sat there for weeks and weeks and weeks cold emailing people. And if anybody's ever tried to do cold outreach, it's painful.
Yeah.
And it's not easy. You know, when you hear it in an interview like this, you go, oh, okay, that was simple. You just emailed people. But no, because you get a lot of rejection, which is probably what you skipped over, is the amount of people that don't respond and don't care about what you're offering them. So just the persistence to use your network and expand your network, go to shows, take all these different opportunities. But the other part of it that I think is worth pointing out is you kept trying different things and kept looking at your career also through the lens of how can I help the people around me? And where I think that the parallel for today is that for artists, a lot of that is how can I entertain or connect on a deeper level with the people around me? When you think about it as from like a business standpoint, working with brands, it's very clear. You can say, well, these brands are trying to sell this product or this service, and I need to help them do that. But for artists, it's the same thing of these are people that are looking to feel a certain way or connect in a certain way, and I need to help them feel these things. You were always conscious of, hey, what would help this artist? Can I shoot a music video for them? Can I be the best photographer for them just, on a whim here while they're in the studio to just add value to their lives? It's that sort of angle, that sort of thinking that I think has been a huge secret to your success. And now having your own company and doing this on a very large level. And I also think that it's kind of where I want to pivot to go into creating content because it's the same mindset.
Yes.
So you have a YouTube channel. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So because that like YouTube series that I worked with like early on, we got to like go to award shows out in LA and meet a bunch of like other big YouTubers. I was like, this is fun. These people are normal people, just like doing fun stuff with their friends and packaging it in a creative way so that we want to watch it. Like it makes our days better. Like
sure.
And we feel like we're getting to know them. Early on, it was kind of like, oh yeah, this sounds fun. And so as I was like working on like doing some performance videos at the studio just to help like people share their music more for people who didn't want to like go to Spotify. So people would just hit play and just watch it happen. I was like, you know what? YouTube seems fun. Like the series like was a lot of work, but I think maybe I could do this too. I like ideas. I like hanging out with people. I like having conversations. Podcasts are fun.
Yes.
I like this. And so, yeah, I went down the trail just trying to like do tutorials. At first, it was just like answering questions I would get in emails a lot. Because of all those emails, I was like, oh, wait, now I have too many emails. I want to make more music. So I was like, oh, like I'm answering a lot of the same questions. So let's just make this a video that I can send, or like to keyword search. And so I did a bunch of like very like straightforward tutorials of like, these are common problems I had like with live sound. These are common problems what I had with like setting up a guitar, like troubleshooting a keyboard. Like we had a keyboard in the studio where I was always like, oh, what's going on with it today? And I just made that content because like this is stuff I wanted the answers to. The YouTube channel became like, what are the questions I wanted to know? Like I wish I would have had answers for when I started out. And so that's very much what it became. It was like, I wish that I had these videos when I was starting out. It started out with like tutorials of like common problems I would have in the studio to like what expectations I should have going into a recording session. Like, it's a lot of money, like when you're starting out, to like invest in quality recording. And so like, how to optimize for that? Because at the end of the day, like I want to like make something cool with cool people and like have it do well. So it wasn't like, no, let's just like sit in the studio and experiment. It was like, no, let's make something cool that we can share super fast. That was like the fun part. And then recently I've been interviewing a bunch of friends like who have made it in music and trying to find out like, A, how did you monetize? B, like, what do you feel like was the big thing that, what's your secret sauce? Because everybody has a different lane. And then kind of like what they wish they would have known starting out.
Yeah.
Just like those kind of basic questions where I think we miss, like, there's always like Mix with the Masters and like some of these very expert courses. But in reality, like those people are so far from the beginning process. A lot of those nuances of just starting out, like sometimes it is just sending hundreds of emails and like not hearing back from like 98 of them.
Yeah. Hearing all the things that are the hard part or the struggles or the little details that often get skipped over when you're at the higher level because you've kind of forgotten about that journey. You're so much further along. This podcast has so many overlaps with the same goals with local artists particularly. And sure, there's something about learning from the people that are at the top of the craft, right? Or the top of the industry. But there's a lot to be said about learning from somebody that's only 1 or 2 steps ahead of you.
Yes.
I feel like there's just right away that everything is a lot more tangible. Of like, oh yes, I can do that. That person literally lives in my city and did these things. I can do this too. That's a big part of this podcast, is just wanting to share the things that have worked and not worked. But one of the subjects we're going to cover a lot in this podcast is content creation. And I think that you're great at making content. And plus, you're very well qualified to judge what good content is because you're working on very, very high-end stuff for bigger companies and brands. Everybody knows to this day, that for the most part, you have to be on social media making stuff. But the big holdup for artists is, what do I make? How do I get anybody to care? What makes content even good? There's a lot of decisions that go into this. And I think that's what I want to focus on here for people is put yourself in the shoes of those clients that you've worked with in the past, right?
Mm-hmm.
But knowing what you know now, today, where do you begin in terms of setting up and deciding, hey, I'm a musician, I make music, now I need to promote myself online, I want to make some content, because there's lots of different types. You can do a YouTube channel, you can do a podcast, you can do social media clips, and more. Let's walk through sort of the steps of trying to figure that out a little bit and decipher what makes good content for you as an artist.
Yes. Okay. I love this so much. And honestly, the way I view good content is the same way I judge a good song, typically, is like, A, it's relatable, like people besides me will like this, or it's an experience I have that people have already resonated with. There's like a nice tight intro. The first lines hook me. And then the chorus is something I want to sing over and over again. And there's like an emotional journey. There's a nice story, like depending on what kind of music you like. Honestly, what I have seen do well with all content as well, really viewing it as that like emotional journey of a song. Like, how do I connect with somebody who is real? And it's not just like, oh, I just want more plays. It's like, no, how do I make more friends? Like, how do I be a better friend? And so like, that's like a lot of the making content is like, it's like podcasts. It's like, this is a fun conversation of just like two friends hanging out, talking like what's worked and what hasn't. And so I think with creating content, going in with that attitude of like, how can I serve other people? Kind of like trying to like offer something, or like not to buy, but like, what is your music really offering people? It's like, there's a project I wrote where I was like, I couldn't fall asleep for a while. I was like, I just want to make an album I can fall asleep to. So I did. And I fell asleep to it. And I was like, that's great. And then I put it on. I was able to license it a little bit. It's like other people liked it for that kind of like boring background thing. It doesn't always have to be shiny and flashy.
Sure.
We can get like really granular, like what makes content.
Let's walk through the different things, because this is a huge topic, right? This could be multiple. This could be an entire podcast series.
Definitely.
So we'll try to be brief on all these things just to give people stuff to be thinking about. But we've already touched on this right now, which is a lot of it comes down to first thinking about your audience. Because everybody's going to have a different style of music, which means it's probably a slightly different style of audience. So thinking about what your audience wants to hear, based on your music, maybe if you're singing sad singer-songwriter songs, there people that are listening to that might be looking for more of an emotional connection. So making those kind of things, think about the type of music, the type of person listening to that, and then think about the content based on those emotions or that kind of storytelling or whatever your genre is. That's a good place to start. And then I think the second thing is deciding what platform, because that's going to really change what type of content you're making.
Definitely. What I love about like choosing a platform too is like sometimes the easiest place to stand out is somewhere where it's not as busy. And so that was something that worked really well when I first started making content. It was right when like Facebook ads were rolling out. So it was like not relevant anymore, but it was like, wait, Facebook ads are popping off. Or like now like TikTok is huge and like the discovery engine. But yeah, there was a book I read really early on and it was called Behind the Glass. I've only ever read the first 2 chapters, but it was thinking about where people are going to be listening to your music or watching your content. Like, what is the experience you want them to have or that you're trying to capture? And so it goes into like, usually the stuff you like is based on the first concert you've ever been to or you remember going to. And so I realized, oh, a lot of my mixes sound like the first concert I ever went to. Like, that's what feels good to me because it was just that moment where music became real to me. And then I really liked listening to music in the car. And so I would always like mix, like it's the car test, like just driving down the road at night, like looking at stars, listening to new music. I think that was fun. And so for content, it is finding like, when do I look at content? Like we're all unique, but we're all the same. And so am I scrolling at 9 p.m. and I just want something to make me laugh before I fall asleep? Or am I scrolling at 9 a.m. going like, I really want to be productive today. What's something that motivates me? And then like from the lens of like, what is my Slumdog Millionaire story? What are all the unique things along my path that give me like a unique qualification to offer advice or speak about whatever to try to like, you know what, today I was really hungry and I was thinking about, you know what, it's fall. I had a good memory in the fall and I just wanted a warm drink and to look at the leaves before they're all gone. That's really relatable. And that could be a whole story. That could be a song. That could be a video. And then kind of using that example of like, then where would people relate to that most? For me, I went to Instagram because that's where I realized a lot of filmmakers were who became my target kind of market. And so I was like, cinematographers, videographers, they're all using Instagram to share their work, to connect with others. It was also becoming the most popular platform at the time. So being strategic of like, where are the people that I want to connect with? Connecting.
Yeah.
And then how do I add to the conversation or just be supportive? So there was a while where when I was working on like growing my Instagram, I would just go and like, it was like an hour a day. I would just comment, like find stuff I really liked and just like leave a nice message, not trying to get anything, but just like, these people are cool. They should keep doing it. And just like being that good friend or like trying to like build that community.
Yeah.
And instead of like, oh, I need them to listen to my stuff. I need them, like, that's hard. And you just kind of like, it is a slog. But like sometimes just like making friends are like what's the most valuable thing in the process.
Yeah. Relationships are huge. It's a lot of what will make or break your career in the end, in the long run. But I want to circle back to one thing that you said that I thought was really interesting, which is starting by thinking about how you consume content. Because sometimes people overcomplicate things or think they need something maybe that they don't. And what I mean by that is when you start by thinking about how do you consume content, more than likely the music that you're making, people that like it are a lot like you.
Yeah.
So if you start by thinking about how do you consume things, what do you like, then you're probably going to be closer to who your true audience really is. There are people that I think make the mistake of thinking, oh, I need to be on TikTok. Like my audience is on TikTok. And it's like, well, are you on TikTok? And if the answer is no, then maybe your audience isn't on TikTok.
Right.
There's exceptions to these things, but I do think that that's a great place to start. How do you consume content? What kind of content do you like? And try to make stuff like that first. You can always pivot and you can always expand. But by picking something that you are familiar with, you're probably going to do a better job on that platform because you know what you like there. And at least you have a stance versus going into something blind. So I think that that's a great place to start. You also need to spend time on a platform to connect with it enough and know sort of the etiquette, which is part of that picking the platform conversation. If you are on YouTube, you know what is expected to some extent of YouTube creators, which is different than what is expected of TikTok creators. One, a lot of times they're very different lengths, right? Or a podcast, this podcast might be an hour long. That's a completely different style of content than making stuff on TikTok. While you might do things all across the map by doing cut downs and stuff like that, depending on what strategy you pick, start with one. Start with one as your main thing, and you can dabble in the others, but start somewhere and focus in on that. You picking YouTube, which I think is a very great platform for musicians. It's a little bit more long form than social media. What do you think is the most important parts of designing content for YouTube specifically?
Oh, I love this question. So when thinking about YouTube as an artist, especially, I think there are two different ways that you can think about it. There's like, YouTube is the second largest search engine. So it's like, you can make stuff that's very searchable. Like, what are problems that people are having, whether it's like as an artist like me, as like somebody who listens to music like me, like problem solving things you can contribute if like maybe you're a good problem solver and that's like, or you like thinking about things a certain way. Like you can platform that on YouTube and it's searchable and it's great. And if that's what you like to do, that's the place to do it. That's kind of how I started. I was like, these are problems I'm having. I know other people are having them. How do I like package this so people can find it as well? Or I can send it an email. And then there's like the entertainment, like the spectacle. You know, I like Mr. Beast, those are spectacle, or like those huge music videos. Like YouTube is great for that too. Like a lot of the large channels are music channels with great music videos and those kind of content. But then there's also like video podcasts and behind the scenes where you do want a little bit more of that like personability. And so maybe that's the story of a song where someone like, oh, I really like this song. Like, I wonder why it was written. So like YouTube is a great place for that, especially as like your career starts to kick off and you have more people interested in your story and in your art and like what kind of motivates it. You know, there's behind the scenes and there's how-tos that I think do really well on YouTube. And then there's just like the spectacles. I think as an artist, it's finding like, which one of those do you enjoy most? And like, which one can you do forever? Because with creating content, I like to think in movies sometimes, but The Sandlot, it's like when I was growing up, Sandlot was a really great movie, but it's about all these kids who play backyard baseball and then one of them eventually goes pro. But the whole idea is to keep the game going. They never kept score. They just kept trying to like keep the game going. And for having a creative career, that is the game. The game is to keep it going. That's why I keep like trying to evolve. I was like, I like audio. I don't want to pivot away from that too much. I like music. I was like, oh, I like the way it matches with visuals. I like connecting with people. I like helping people. I like when somebody hears something or watches something and it like changes their mind or it makes them feel amazing. And so in that evolution process of keeping the game going, how do I bake that into content that then helps me connect with people who also enjoy the things I enjoy, but then also help in the areas where I've personally struggled with, or I've seen friends really struggle with? Like, how do I solve the problems for the people I care about most? Or how do I like elevate the mood of the people I care about most? Then with YouTube, it's like a big search engine. And like, how do I like play into that with like click nails, thumbnails, and like titles and getting clickable, shareable things going?
I love that. And I want to keep focusing on some sort of tactical things, but I think it's worth taking a little bit of a tangent again to talk about mindset, because I do think that if you have the right mindset / strategy in place, that might be even more important than anything else, in that it's okay to go into something knowing that it's not going to be your best work.
Yes.
Or it's not perfect yet. You're not going to be Mr. Beast tomorrow. It doesn't work that way. It's more important that you think about, hey, this sounds fun to me. This will actually help the people I want to try to reach, or entertain the people I want to try to reach, or connect emotionally with the people I want to reach. Something along those lines, that it's actually going to get me in front of the people I want to be in front of, right? And I could keep doing this. I could keep experimenting with this, because I can guarantee if you're just starting off in it, it will change. Whatever you can come up with some master plan, but you're probably going to pivot along the lines of, well, if I tweak how I do this or structure this, or maybe changing platforms, maybe you start by being on TikTok, where it's more of a discovery platform. Videos are short. It's a little bit more towards the entertainment side of things, although there's exceptions to all of that. And you're doing that, you're working, but you realize that you want to go deeper. You need more time, and you pivot over to a platform like YouTube, where you can really let your fans know more about you, because people that are on YouTube are watching videos for a longer period of time. That's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. The point is that the reason you'd be able to do that pivot is because you stayed in the game long enough to keep making content. So I just want to reiterate the importance of thinking about what it is you want to make and making sure that that feels sustainable to you. It feels enjoyable to you. Because if you go out just thinking about it from the other perspective of, oh, I'm just going to do what is trending because that's what I have to do, or this is who I think my audience is, and you're not necessarily correct about that, that stuff is always the stuff that fizzles out. And it's okay if that happens. If you realize, oh, I made a mistake, pivot again, find something. Or if you realize you're not enjoying what you're doing, pivot again. Big reason why I picked the podcast. I get to have friends over to my studio and chat and drink coffee and hang out. there's a million things I need to get better at while I do that. And that could be better. But it was like this morning when we were talking, I was, complaining to you about there's so many difficult pieces. And I feel like there's still so much that I don't know about how to do this extremely well. We'll get there. You know, that's not the point. The point is to start and make improvements as we go. All right, let's get back to the tactical stuff though, because I do want to give people actionable tips. I think one of the first questions is, what do you actually need to start making content in terms of the gear, and what do you not need?
Oh, I think if you have a phone, like if you're watching this on a smartphone, like that's all you need.
Yeah, agreed. Phone cameras today are crazy good.
The microphone technology, all of it, it's great. Whether you're a songwriter, whether you're just trying to do video, I'd recommend video every time because, even if they're not looking at it, they'll hear it. So like that's why like music videos and content and things like that, I think are just still so important, even though maybe the monetization is less like optimized. But yeah, using a phone, like making sure it looks pretty, basic framing. Also, like, what are you optimizing for? Do you want it to look more pretty or do you want it to sound better? There's like $10 mics you can get now that are like totally fine. You just have to learn how to use them. You could use your earbuds or whatever. But just starting is the key. Like, I read too much and this is a little more theoretical. There's a book called So Good They Can't Ignore You. And it's kind of based on a Steve Martin quote. Like, Steve Martin has had this really long career, but his whole goal was just to be like, how can I be so good that nobody can ignore me? This book by Cal Newport, who also wrote some like digital minimalism and things of like kind of focusing and deep work, is another one as well. It's like, how much of this do I need to do to be like reasonably to be good at it? Do I need to make 100 videos? Do I need to make 1,000 videos? Do I need to write 1,000 songs? Like, I think Phineas Eilish, so Billie Eilish's brother who like produces all of her stuff, he has like a thing and his like bedroom was like 10,000 hours, the 10,000 hour rule. How much effort do I need to put in to actually be good at this? Especially with video and like musicians, I think like how many covers do I need to play to feel confident performing on camera? If you do 20, you're probably going to be a lot better than most people because most people just wait to start.
Yeah.
And so it's like, maybe one Saturday, it's like, I'm just going to pull up the tabs, record videos of this. And even if I'm just watching playback of myself and going like, ooh, I look a little funny, or, oh, like I could have played that chord better. Oh, if I liked when I was sitting in the light this way, I like looked more pretty or whatever. Like I felt more confident when I played it like this. Like there's so much you can learn that is not like learning is more important than earning oftentimes. And so by like picking whatever thing you're going to work on, whether that is like how you set up the camera, how the lighting is, like all those little things and improving at like a 1% better every time, like that's going to be the magic of whatever you make.
Yeah.
And that's going to keep the game going.
Do you suggest having a light right away?
I find it helpful depending on where you live. Like if you have a nice window light always looks great, but it's a mood. It's a very certain vibe. Sure. So maybe like if you're an acoustic musician, you might want to just always play when it's sunny. Like, so maybe that's how you capture the moment. Like it's a sunny afternoon. I'm going to have my camera always set up or like a phone stand, put it there and then play while the light's on my face and it looks good on my phone.
Yeah. So if you've got like a stand for your phone, a basic light and a $10 microphone, you're pretty much set up to be as good of a content creator as really.
Yeah.
If you want to go deeper and you want to do those things, or maybe you already have a nice camera because you like to do photography and things like that, sure, get that stuff activated, but don't overcomplicate it when you get started. Remember, the idea is a lot more important than how it looks. People are totally fine with low quality everything as long as the mood, the content connects. The concept is there. If that's there, the quality doesn't matter. In fact, some people prefer it to look a little bit more. I mean, there are big time creators that will go out of their way to make it look lo-fi, like it's not, like they're not trying. So you don't have to worry about quality. I think that's something that some people will get hung up on. Audiences will connect with rawness a lot of times. So if you like doing high quality, you can work to it, but don't feel like that's where post number one has to be.
Yeah, we like doing what we're good at, but the only way to get good at something is to suck first.
Yeah, 100%.
So it's like to enjoy the process of just like being that uncomfortable learning, like to be that novice again, like it's so uncomfortable, but like that is the most tactical thing. It's like just do more of what you hate. like what part of this process do I hate the most that I can just get better at? I don't like tuning my guitar. I don't like how I look on camera. Or I don't like how I sound in a microphone. Just do more of it. You're going to get over that.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to think about it as more than you. Most people are going to be like, oh, worst case, it's like, that's not for me. They keep scrolling.
Yeah, exactly. If something's not good, no one's going to watch it. They'll just get past it anyway.
Yeah. And then that's like another rep. Like viewing it as reps, I think is like really great. If like the more free throws you shoot, the more you're going to make.
Yes. The other thing that can really, really help with that is do it with a friend.
Yes.
Do it with a friend. You can get so in your head when it comes to looking at yourself on camera or hearing yourself through the mic for the first time. Do it with a friend. We here at Helvig Productions, we make content for our clients as we go. We'll do long form stuff that's better for YouTube, like behind the song, behind the lyrics, that kind of stuff. But we also do short social media discovery clips for people, sing-alongs with chorus, things that are trending. But more importantly, we just show people how to do it. Not that it's this big secret of how to do it. It's more about the comfort of doing it with somebody else. And I've found time and time again that that's really what people need more than anything, is just somebody to say, that looks fine. It's not cringy. It might feel cringy to you, but it's fine. That's what I see all the time. Do more of that. And just getting somebody in your inner circle or somebody you trust, somebody you're working with, to tell you that's cool, or to give you honest feedback of, I would do that differently. You should maybe not look that way or whatever, practice it this way, so that you can just get a little bit of feedback before it goes out to the world. That can make all the difference in getting started, just getting past that first initial resistance.
Yes, but also still posting it anyways, I think. If I can be a little contrary.
Please.
Because I think for me, a lot of times I'll kill things before I ever put them out. And then sometimes when I put them out, that's what I needed. Like, definitely have those creator friends you can make stuff with. But then also, there is something magic when it's people you don't know and like they're truly objective about your art. Like, it's scary.
Yeah.
But when a stranger goes, I love this, or like even YouTube videos, it's like, I don't have a lot of views, but like some people are like, I love this video. This made my day. I'm like, yes, that's exactly why I made this. It was like, I was in that place once and that helped me. There's something to me, and I like, this might be a personality thing, but I always found it more fun when strangers connected with my things because I wasn't expecting it. Where like sometimes it is hard to get friends to be honest with you.
That's true.
But at the same time, like, just keep going is the advice that you probably need. Like, just keep making things. So finding somebody who's like, yeah, you can improve next time, but like, put it out. Like, just do it.
Yeah. And if you are already making content, let's say this is not a problem for you to get started. You're doing it, but you need to see better results. That's when you need to start asking for feedback, and probably not from your immediate circle if they're all approving it or whatever.
Right. Then that's the magic of like working with a studio or like working with like people who have experience in film and things. Like, they are used to doing this and they're going to make sure you sound as good as possible.
Yeah.
But doing it with people who like are around it and know that the game is to do more, to keep it going, trying to get to that next step, whatever that is, whether that is just finishing your first song, finishing your first video, posting your first song, posting your first video. Like, there are very granular steps and like there's so many different skills. Like, performing a song is way different than recording a song, even though it feels like the same. Sometimes it can be the same, but they are really different depending on what genre you're in, what kind of content you're making.
Yeah.
And so there are those nuances where finding the right circle to kind of like bring your art into the world with. Because that was one of the things when I was making records I really loved, was being that kind of like safe space for people to like try new things where like they didn't want the weird look from their brother, or like, yeah, their mom was going to say nice, but they kind of wanted to be like, wait, will people actually listen to this? And so being at the studio, I could be like, I really like it. Like, it's really cool. Or like, I love all of it except like these words, is when I kind of like feel like I'm going to grab my phone. Having that space where the goal is to make something and make it better, but still like good enough is okay. It doesn't have to be perfect. Oh, we were talking earlier, and this reminded me of like any song or piece of content is just capturing a moment. It doesn't have to be perfect. You're going to look back on it and cringe most likely anyways. But what's going to be fun is when you remember when you were making it. Who you were with, why you were making it, the season of life. Like, there's things I made 10 years ago that I'm like, I can't believe that worked. Then there's sometimes a lot of people connect with it. I have a friend, and it was one of those clients where I was like trying to help them market right away. So we did a song and I was like, you know what? I think you need to do this Facebook thing. There's some ads. You can buy like 50,000 impressions for like $5. I think you should do it. And they're like, cool. And it was a song they had mixed themselves. Like, they hadn't even had us like work on it at the studio. But I was like, it's really good. It's resonating. Like, I played it to a couple friends. Who were like, this one's the best one. We should do this one. And sure enough, it like started going viral. And then like the next day, like they were on all these blogs when that was big. And then labels were calling them the next day. And like there was a lot of other moving parts, but it was not like the polished mix. It was the mix that captured them at the moment. And we've talked about it. And it's like, the song is great. And like the emotion is there. And people want to connect with that emotion and things. That was what gave them their break, because they were just doing it and committing to the process of putting it out wherever they were at.
Authenticity and vulnerability are very, very powerful. I would say considerably more powerful than presentation and the framing of it. Now, those things are often very, very important to us creators. It's the presentation and the framing. But don't forget that people can usually see right through that. And we have so much content coming at us every day that sometimes we just don't care anymore, you know? So it depends. It depends on your audience, depends on a lot of things, but there's never a time where those things will not help you. You know, you might not want to be vulnerable or things like that, depending on, again, your audience and your message, your brand, but especially authenticity. Always will help you if you can dial into that more. The more that you can feel like you're really communicating your true self, other people will feel that too.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Enthusiasm and emotion are like the secret sauce. I geek out about decision making sometimes, but like every decision, whether it's to keep watching, to buy, to do anything, is an emotional decision. And so the more you can capture how you feel about whatever you're making, and you can put that into your performance or however you're making it, like show it to a stranger on a phone and they start feeling the same thing, that's when you know you have good content. That is when you know you have something that's shareable, that people are going to connect with. And if you feel that about it, awesome. That should be success. There's projects I've made where I was like, I know nobody is probably going to like this, but I really enjoyed making it. And that was success for me.
Yeah.
And like being okay with that. There's projects where I've done that and I've learned something. And then like 3 projects down the road, it's like that was the secret sauce that made that work for me. Or it was like, that's what helped me meet a deadline. That's what helped me like make a new connection.
Right.
And it was because I took that time to make something for me. I was okay with taking that risk because I was like, I didn't care what anybody else thought. I made it for me and I just trusted that like if it meant this much to me, it'll probably mean something similar to somebody else eventually.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and along those lines, actually, that made me think of one other thing that's sort of tactical, which is if you are doing something like that, where it's just like, you know what, I just need to make this. I guess it depends on the type of content you're making and how you're putting it out there. But I kind of want to use that as a way to pivot towards talking about how you sell something online. And by sell, I mean like present it in terms of the title, the thumbnail, the description, whatever it might be. Because if you do have something that you're like, this is just really meaningful to me, and I don't know if it's exactly the right content, well, the one thing you should spend time on then is at least making the clickability of it make sense to who you think might connect with it. That's important across all content, but especially if you're going to do it that way. We were talking about that when you first got in. It's an art. You know, a lot of creators will talk about when they're making content that they'll actually just start with the thumbnail, what the image is going to look like, and then pick a caption from there, and then actually make the content, which is crazy to me. I'm definitely not at that stage.
It's so hard.
But it makes a lot of sense that how clickable something is ultimately. Now, I'm not saying go do clickbaity things necessarily, but the point is trying to frame something to show people what they're going to get out of it. How do you think about your titles when you're putting together YouTube stuff?
Oh, I don't think about them enough yet. Most struggles in life just come down to either failure to prepare or failure to follow through. And so for me, there's this idea of like, the more the thumbnail or like the image can evoke an emotion and a question, and then the title can kind of keep that going. And then the first like 5 seconds of the video or 30 seconds or whatever, depending on what kind of content it is, the more that can all be unified, that is what is going to hook you in and keep you interested. Like pattern interrupts, like this solves my problem. This is what I want to be entertained by right now. I did a video with my friend Chris where he's a really successful composer as well. And he's gotten like 24 million streams on Spotify, things like that. And so I had a very like good clickable title, and the thumbnail like worked. It wasn't the best, but it worked. I could see like in the analytics, it was like, even though the video did really well for my channel, it was just like, oh wait, I didn't deliver on the promise. Or like as soon as I mentioned that in the video, everybody started clicking off. But then there were some people who like watched the whole way through. And so it's like, how do you align like, who's the person who wants to watch this whole thing to be like, okay, what would they click on? And I'm really picky about the content I consume. So sometimes that's my barometer of like, what would make me watch this for 20 minutes? Like, what does this need to be called? And then how do I like pre-plan that as much as possible? Spotify playlists, that's kind of how I think about titling content. Is like, is this a mood? Is this a mood
like
video?
An aesthetic or yeah.
Yeah. Am I trying to capture a mood of like when somebody wants to watch this? Or am I trying to capture a problem? And so I think with like, whether it's entertaining or educating or whatever, capturing the emotion that you are going to deliver in your content is the most important thing when picking a title and a thumbnail. I talked to a big YouTuber once, and Like my buddy was like, okay, what's the biggest like takeaway? And he's like, whatever you do, just make it shareable. Make it something that when you watch it, you want to send it to somebody else. And I was like, that is so basic, but also just like so true.
It makes a ton of sense. Obviously not easy to do. If you're a full-time creator and you know, that you get to work on that all day and thinking about concepts, then it's easier. But good to have in the back of your mind in terms of what little change could you make or what a different angle could you make that would make people maybe want to share something. Like at the same time, all of these things are helpful. I also want to just put a caveat out there that it's okay. Like you don't have to do all these things right.
No.
You're not doing them all right.
No,
I'm
not
not doing them all right. And we both know that we should be. You just keep doing what you can. A lot of times we don't necessarily need to be taught. We need to be reminded. So there's a lot of us just saying, yeah, we should do these things better, you know? Yeah, and that's okay. More importantly, it's that you're trying, that you're getting out there, that you're looking at your analytics and you're going, okay, I see room for improvement, versus if you are just creating stuff and not trying to make it better and you're frustrated that there's not a lot of traction or why am I not getting new fans and my views, I'm not going past 30 views. You got to look at your stuff and make changes. You have to keep trying new things. Maybe at that point, now that you have been creating, you've got the process down. Now you can start looking at those things too. So just depending on where you're at on your journey, you can hone into some of these things that we've brought up more or less. It's okay to skip past some things, but titling is super important. Put in the title, what is in it for them?
Yes.
Is this something they can relate to? Is this something that will fix a problem for them? Is this going to entertain them? Or is this going to be a mystery? You know, that's another big thing is opening up a story loop where you click on it because you want to know what's at the end. Just framing your content around that sort of thing. Now, not every piece of content needs to do this. You can also just put out things that just, you know, for whatever reason at all.
Yeah.
Some people are into that too, where it's just more of a daily blog of whatever you're doing that day. Fine. Some people will like that too. Just depends on the platform, depends on you. Make stuff and keep pivoting, keep trying to make it better.
Absolutely. I think that's great advice. Also, like tactically, a huge thing I see like creators and musicians get hung up on all the time is they're so worried about trying to build an audience, they forget what they really want to do and what they really want to make. I think it's so easy to go online and be like, I don't have enough followers. I don't have enough plays, that you forget why you're trying to start the game in the first place. Getting popular and stuff is not fun. Like at the end of the day, like I've met famous people and they're just like not happy about it. They just want to have their private life. Like I know a guy, has like dozens of Grammy noms and he's like, I just want to hang out with my kids today. And that's what he wants to do. And like he's had all of it and it's just not what he wants. And so the biggest thing I think creators make is like they get caught up in the trends. They get caught up in like, how do I get in front of more people? When the real secret is like, how do I get better doing what I really like? Because the longer you can play that game and make that sustainable for yourself, the longer you're going to do it. And the tortoise always wins. I love that story. It's just like the slow and steady, the consistency makes all the difference when it comes to content, music, creative careers. If you can keep doing it, like first, before you figure out how to get more likes, figure out how you can make 100 of them, how you can make 1,000 of them. Because if it's not easy enough to do it like day after day after day, because it will be work and it will be hard. Like I picked what I'm doing for a career and there's so many days where I'm like, I do not want to go to work. Like that will happen. But the more you can enjoy it and the more you can enjoy that struggle, the more you're going to keep doing it and the more you will succeed because you'll have more chances to iterate. You'll get better at like, oh, I'm going to get better at thumbnails today. I'm going to get so which means I'm going to get better at like taking pictures, composition, AI art, whatever it might be. And then all of a sudden more people are hearing your songs because sometimes that creative like, wait, more people are clicking it because they like my album art. Great. Oh, what if I made this like the song title instead of like the chorus lyric? What if I pick some weird lyric or like, oh, that was a weird phrase I said. I keep saying it. What if this was the first word to my song? There's ways to like make people engage that just by trying to work on one thing like over maybe a dozen times. Like, what if for these 12 videos, I'm just going to work on my thumbnail and just like be fine with my delivery? Okay, cool. What if for the next 12 videos, I'm going to work on my performance? You're going to get better because you're trying and you're just picking one thing to improve on. Because if you try to do all of them at once, you're going to just paralyze yourself. I have done that so many times.
Yeah, I agree entirely. I think that's great advice. And if all else fails, go to somebody else to work with them and get their feedback. If you're too in your head about it, pick somebody else. I mean, that's a big thing that we see here when artists come in is just simply showing them, hey, pull up TikTok, pull up CapCut, pull up these tools. Here's a ring light. put your phone on there, start doing it, go. And we just force them to do it, like sing along, whatever. And watching it back with them and just pointing out like, that's cool. That looks fine. That can make all the difference if you're stuck getting started or if you're too in your head, or getting somebody else that might say, I think that this kind of content would be cooler for you. You should be doing this. Like, you tend to go deep on your conversations. Maybe you should think more long-term. Maybe you should start a podcast or a YouTube channel and have these types of conversations, and don't even try TikTok. Having some outside input can make a huge difference if you feel like that's holding you back.
That makes me think of, what do you think is your superpower?
Oh, in terms of like career, music specifically, podcasting specifically, or just anything?
I like to think of, what are my superpowers, especially when I'm creating things? Like, what are the things that I can do well that other people find really hard? And so sometimes it's not a sexy thing. Sometimes it's like, I just geek out about the flow or the look or like the feel of things. Maybe it's a taste thing, or I like thinking about big ideas and then applying them to completely different things. So for me, I'm like an ideas guy. And like when I first learned guitar, then all of a sudden, like 8 of my friends were also playing guitar because I just liked like, hey, let's do this together. That was just kind of my vibe. And that I realized as I gotten older is like, that's one of my superpowers, is like when I'm into something, I can find or build a community of people who are also into the same thing. Like maybe I'm deluded, but right now I'm like, that's what I'm believing. That's where I'm like living it. Like, and so it's just like, as you create, like finding people like that to help hone in on your superpowers. Like some people are great singers and performers, and maybe they're not good songwriters. You don't have to do it all. You can just do covers and you can make a living doing that. Also, for me, video content is something I kind of don't ever want to do for a living. If I'm doing it and it's fun and like I monetize it, great. But like that's one of those distinctions where my kryptonites are like, when I have to do things I really care about for money, it just ruins it. Like having a creative career is finding that perfect love-hate balance of what can I do 1,000 times and be okay being sick of. If you love songwriting and telling stories and like that gives you a lot of joy and that's like where you find a lot of meaning in life, what if instead of doing that full time, what if you found a good professional job that you didn't mind, that would let you write all your stories like over the weekends, every weekend, or you got a month off to just write once a year? Like, I think that's way more magic than like, oh, I have to like, what am I going to write today? I need to get clicks. I need to like sell more products online. Like, I think sometimes minimizing the pressure is also a great way to let like creative juices flow. There's 2 faucets I like to play with in my life when I'm creating content. Do I need to turn up the pressure, or do I need to like turn down the pressure? Oh, limitations breed creativity is a quote I love. If I only have 4 tools and I have to like MacGyver, like 4 tools and I need to get out of this room, how am I going to do it? I think that's a very good way of like, if I need to write a song, like what can I do with a guitar, maybe a kick sample and a snare sample? Or what can I do if like I just have a phone and I'm only using my window light? Like what kind of videos can I make that I would enjoy, or like my best friend would enjoy?
Sure.
Maybe that person I want to impress would enjoy. Where is that line of like the minimum viable product, to use a really businessy term? But then also like, what are those things that I really love to do that I don't want to ever monetize? I don't ever want to like have to do. Making videos is one of those things where I'm like, I do not want to be a professional video maker, but I love making YouTube videos with my friends. Like that is so fun to me. Still, like in the editing process, I'm like, there's so many choices here, but it's really fun. And if that keeps going well and like that's the game I keep playing and that works out, great. But in the meantime, I have a career I really like and I can just like treat it like work if I want to, or I can get really invested. And so, yeah, I don't even know where I started now, but that's a huge thing I see a lot of artists missing when they're trying to create content, is like, is this something I actually enjoy? And would I want to do 1,000 of these? Yeah.
And so going back to the start of that, of thinking about what do you think is your strength or your superpower?
Yeah.
As you
What's your superpower?
Yeah. That's a good question. Especially for content for me, I think I'm looking for that. We'll see.
Yeah.
But I would say that in my professional life, my superpower is probably the ability to sort of edit or curate. A lot of times as the producer, we've got the songwriter's ideas and then maybe there's a session musician coming in, or it's the ability to sort of say, I want that part and that part and that part. Because it's usually there's a case of, I could do this, I could do that. I've got this idea. I don't know. They all work. And my superpower is being able to kind of quickly say, that's the one, cut out that needs to go. We can keep this and let's move on. With helping other artists too, if they're coming in and saying, I don't know, I can make this kind of content, this kind of thing. That's the one I think you connect with. Whether or not I'm always right, I can make up my mind quickly when it comes to curation and editing down what I think are the best parts for my taste.
Yes. Okay, that's so cool. It's like the producer role, really. Defining all of like the right pieces to make the pie something unique. That's so fun. That's the magic about working with other people is everybody brings something different to the table. I think what's really hard starting out as like a creative is I need to DIY everything because like budget limitations, whatever. But you can get caught in that where it's like you can DIY yourself to death and where your art will suffer or like the things you want to make will suffer because you're not working with different people. You're not having different flavors, especially like in my line of work. It's very technical. Like songwriting and stuff is fun and kind of like theoretical. But then with like audio, it gets really technical and we're talking about like measuring decibel levels and LUFS, RMS, like all these like acronyms or whatever. But when you work with other people, they can add those things to your project if you don't get like stuck in the, I need to do everything, I need to do whatever. And so don't DIY yourself to death. Collaborating is magic, and that's kind of the way you learn and grow. People are going to see your art different ways, and especially as you try to progress, if you feel like you're at a plateau, maybe show it to 10 more people than you normally would. Maybe post it like before it's ready. You'll get feedback, Yeah, you might have some trolls or whatever, but what did the troll say that was maybe accurate? Like, was it boring? If they say something mean about you, like, how do you lean into it? Like, use what you have to like keep going and figure out your own game of like in your own superpower. Like, maybe my superpower is to be funny. Maybe my superpower is to write songs about every day. Pick out the parts of this weird AI thing that will make people laugh or make people cry. Maybe you can make something that's 15 seconds long that makes people completely change their mind about something. Those are all like very different skills. And I've seen people with all of those skills individually that when they bring it to another project with somebody with a different strength, it just makes all the difference.
Yeah.
It was like that music producer buddy of mine where he's like, if you have one thing that works and you put it with another hit, you're going to have a hit. Maybe it's like on different levels of success. Like, I think there was a really good concept I heard where it's like viral for me, which I think the term viral is really funny. But what is a good measure of success? Like for me at this stage, if I post this, like maybe my personal best is 30 views. How do I get 35 views? Or what would I have to do to make this video get 3,000 views? Because that's a huge leap. Or 300 views. Do I need to start it faster? Do I need to not go like, oh, hi today. The best thing that you can do today if you're making something is, and then like give your best advice or whatever. Figuring out those little tweaks to kind of like exhibit your superpowers, I think is also very smart, but in that sustainable way.
Yeah. If you have a sense of what you're really good at, then find other creators that are doing that, watch their content, see what works, and start there. It's totally fine to emulate and to copy formats and to just try what has already been done and see how it works for your audience because you're going to naturally do it differently. You're going to do it in your own voice and your own style. I think a lot of people worry about like, well, I don't want to rip somebody off, but it's like, how did you start learning an instrument? You start by playing somebody else's song. You pick it up, you play a cover song, and you copy. And you do that for a long time before you really start to create something of your own. And that's okay. That's totally fine because you play it a little bit differently. Same thing with content. So if you do know what you're maybe like, I want to make this kind of content. I want to do this thing. Great. Look for creators that are doing that and try to copy. Copy everything down to like how they format it, how long it is, how they do their hook, how they do their caption or description. I mean, obviously don't rip somebody off 100%, but like follow the format and start there and learn from it. And then if you're not sure, if you're like, man, I just don't know what makes me unique, and you're still sort of looking for your brand, your angle on your artistry and how you want to do it, then just experiment. That's probably also the time either start making a lot of stuff or reach out to somebody else. Try to get some objective opinions about your stuff a little bit because you might just be in your head too much.
I think that's a really big pitfall of a lot of us who like to make things is like, we spend so much time like worrying and thinking about things that we're creating problems that aren't really there.
Guilty.
Every day.
DIY to death is a true thing. And I was talking with Chris Koza for an episode and, he was saying DIY is a myth. You have to have other people involved along the way to make it work, to last. There are going to be seasons where maybe you are more DIY or maybe a project where you just feel like I need to hold it close and do everything. And that's okay. It's probably not going to be that way forever. At some point, you're going to have to find teammates and people to help you that also care about this, if only for feedback, but probably to actually do some work too.
What's hard to in that DIY stage is the balance between earning and learning. Like Warren Buffett said, like sometimes it's way more valuable to learn than it is to earn. And that's like from one of the richest people ever. So focusing on like, what can I learn? What skills can I get better on in every stage of your growth? That is something I stumbled onto, where I knew like I just needed to get as much experience in audio as I could. And so I did live sound, and I was like, essentially I was mixing albums like in 40 minutes or whatever, however long a show was. It was like I had to mix an album in 40 minutes. And so I got really good at identifying EQs and different frequencies and things like that. Like what are these like micro skills that I need to learn? But then also like, how am I measuring success as I go? And then when do I need to hand it off to others? When is my instinct to do it myself holding me back? And like, am I creating like my own upper limit? Mm-hmm. So often we can hold ourselves back because of, oh, we don't want to show it to somebody else. Or, oh, we don't want to post it because we don't like the way we look. It's like, you never know. Like sometimes that little quirk about you is what people actually love about you. A good buddy, he like brought a song into the studio. He's like, I don't like this thing I do with my mixing. Like, is it my speakers? Do I need new gear or whatever? And the two of us who were like listening back were like, that's what we love about the song, about all your music, is it has this kind of like, it was like, I don't know, it was like some bump in the low mids or something like that, where he was like, oh, I feel like this is a problem. We're like, no, like that's what we love about your music, is like, it creates a certain kind of feel. And he was just like, oh, maybe I don't need to worry about that. Yeah. And like some problems are not problems. By bringing it to other people and like getting out of the DIY bubble really helps.
Totally. Well, man, I don't want to keep you here all day. I really appreciate this conversation. I feel like we touched on a lot. Is there anything that you would want to sort of emphasize, kind of reflecting back at your own journey, both on making your own content, but also editing and fixing a lot of other people's content? Just as kind of a last reminder to people of what you think is the recipe for getting started or improving on being a content creator.
Absolutely. In any creative career, the biggest thing I see as people forget is dreams change, and that's okay. I think for so long, like in the like indie music world, it was like, don't sell out, don't do this. I was like, no, dreams change. Like, and that's okay. And just like going with that process, like, you know, for a while, it's like, I wanted to be a performer. And then I was a performer and I realized I didn't like that as much. And I went to doing more technical stuff. I was like, oh, there's a limit to how much of this I can do. And so then I started moving into like making more things, trying different things, like moving between industries with a similar skill set. And then my dreams change. And now like I figured out that I like the business kind of creative side just as much as like the art creative side. And that's okay. And that's me. And that's what makes me unique. And so being okay with dreams changing is fine. I think there's so many people I see who try to do the thing that like they were always good at, they keep doing it, and then they end up miserable because they sacrifice more than they wanted to. And they didn't realize it because they thought their dreams could never change. It's okay to get old. It's okay to like change with your age and to have your dreams change as you get older. Like pivot, evolve. Like that's what we're here to do, especially like in like the context of content creation or pursuing a creative career. Like embrace the evolution, embrace the change, embrace the new dreams.
Yeah. Your first idea doesn't have to be the best one and the last one.
Exactly.
Well, thanks so much for sharing that. If people want to connect with you, learn more about you, where would you like to send them?
I'm most active on Instagram, the Taylor Lewin. Otherwise, taylorlewin.com is where I have more stuff. My company, _audio.co, is where I post more of my like brand stuff, but they're pretty much the same. And then on YouTube, at Taylor Lewin is my tag.
Yeah, check out the YouTube channel. It's great.
Yeah, let me know what you like. I love like talking about all this stuff too. So we got to talk more too.
Definitely.
So that'll be fun.
Thanks for being here. I'm going to put all those links in the show notes. If you're still watching, I would also love your feedback. Please send me an email, steven@secretsfromthescene.com. That'll be in the show notes as well. What do you like about these episodes? What do you not like? If you're enjoying it, I always appreciate if you hit subscribe, like, or share it with a friend. But your feedback is really, really valuable. So hit me up and let me know. Thanks for listening.